And here is my agenda, by the way. We'll talk about Plot Auto Archive, Plot Weed Sections, Soft Shadows in Composer, spool files and some of the things you can do with spool files, show you how you can actually apply a gradient to your text or to your graphics and then actually distort those text and graphics and have the gradient distort with it. We'll talk about on-screen fills and PLT extract, which is a new feature we just added in Omega 6.5 that allows you to find out mission-critical information about your PLT file and about your output, and you can even merge it back into a presentation back in Composer. So it's kind of a whole circle of production and information and then present. We have a couple plot topics and spool file topics and things like that. So first of all, we have Plot Auto Archive and Plot Weed Sections. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back here to Composer. So Auto Archive is basically a way, as it says back here in the PowerPoint, it's a way to allow you to go ahead and automatically save the jobs that you're outputting, whether it's a job you send to a plotter, a job you send to your Gerber Edge, or even if you do a print cut job going to your Gerber Edge and to your plotter. So it can automatically store certain information based upon whatever the settings are that you want to go ahead and save. So you go to Plot, and then you go to the Tools menu, and then down here toward the bottom you see that we have Archive. And this brings up a dialog box that gives you a lot of different options in terms of the information that you want to save, and also prompts for helping you to preserve your disk space and things like that. So I'll kind of start at the top and work my way down toward the bottom. So first of all, if you want to turn on this archiving, you just click on the button at the top, which is Automatically Archive Output. And if you turn it on, it will indeed automatically archive your output. And then sort of the meat of what you can save is down here in this next section. So select the files that you want to include in your archive. So you can save your PLT files, your PRM files. Your PRM files are the parameter files that are generated by GSP-Plot. So if you do an access swap, or if you do a reverse, or if you turn on whatever settings in Plot that you might use for a particular job, a PRM file saves all those settings. And you can also preserve the PRM file in this archive automatically. You can also save a spool file automatically as well, and we'll talk about what spool files are here in a moment. But basically, if you do save spool files, it's going to make it perfectly capable to allow you to recreate that exact same job at a later date because it's going to be preserved in this archive. Some other things that you might save, I don't necessarily save them, but you might save linked images. So if you put a JPEG file into your Composer file, it'll automatically save that JPEG file. You can save any TrueType fonts that might be used in a PLT file. You can save any ICC profiles with this color correction files. You can save a job summary file, and you can also save a PLT thumbnail. So I'll kind of go through and we'll step through an archive and we'll take a look at what all these various things are. Okay?
Hey, Dale, it's Bill here. It's Bill
here.
Where'd you find that that screen?
Okay, sure. First of all, you're here in GSP-Plot. I can bring up a different job too. So, but here in GSP-Plot, then you go to the Tools menu, and then down here toward the bottom, you go to Archive. Tools.
I see it. Thank you.
Not at all. No problem. And then it brings up the dialog box. All right, and then I turn this guy on here at the top, and then I just sort of discuss what some of these are here. In terms of the name of your archive file, the archives that are saved as Windows zip files. So the zip files that you can use to compress things and to save a whole bunch of files together in a single zip file. We're using the zip format and just creating just a standard zip file with this various information included in the zip file. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any of these 8 items will be included in the zip file if you choose them to be included. In terms of the naming conventions for your zip file, you can customize the naming of your jobs by using these various checkboxes down here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn them all off so we can see how that works. So first of all, and the thing that I always use, of course, is the file name. And by the way, the order that you click on these checkboxes is the order that they're going to be presented in the file name. So you can see here I clicked on file name, and it gave me quickplot.zip because I did just an output from Composer. Next, you can do the date, and it does it in 06/22/17. Next, you can do the time if you want to, and the time can be important because if you're outputting a job several times in a row, or if you're looking at various what-if scenarios, you can keep all these archives and keep track of the time as well. So 10, 14, and 21 seconds. You can also add some additional text onto the end of it if you want to. So if you want to say, Dana, or if you want to put your name there, or if you want to put the name of the customer or something like that, you can put that in the archive as well. And finally, and you can see the example of it up here at the top. Finally, you can tell it what type of a job it is. You can tell at the end it'll pop on a P if it's a print job, a C if it's a cut job, or PC if it's print as well as cut. And there's also a separator that you can add in here. So if you want to do something instead of a dash, you can use a period or a colon or whatever you want to do. It just has to be something that's allowed in the Windows saving convention. So you can't use any wacky wow-colored characters. Down here at the bottom, this section is really intended to give you reminders or to help you preserve your disk space. So it's just some more logistics and sort of housekeeping for the archive file. So if an archive name already exists, you can the system can prompt you to type in a new name. You can add a suffix. It'll add a suffix automatically, like a -1, -2, or you can have it overwrite automatically if you want it to. So I just tell it to add a suffix, and I don't have to worry about it at all. It just kind of saves my files for me automatically. And finally, in terms of disk space, if you're doing a lot of output or if you're working with really large files, you can have it give you a message when you're archiving and your disk space exceeds 80%. Or you can change this value if you want to be very conservative and not have these archives take up too much space. You can put it down to 5% or 10% or something like that. Also, if you're creating a really very large file, you have lots of the PLT file is large, you have lots of linked images, things like that, you can have it warn you if your archive file, the actual final zip file, is larger than however many megabytes. So you can pop this guy up, make it very large. You can make it very small, depending if you want to be conservative or not with your file saving. And finally, you can have it remove archive files that are older than, and you can say never. So always keep all of my files older than X number of days, whether it's 2 days, 5 days, 15 days, or 365 days. And you can also have the system warn you first before it goes ahead and deletes these archive files. So that's what that message is when you come into GSPplot and you get that message about something happening. You have these archive files that are more than X number of days old. So I'll just show you that again just so you get an idea for what that is. So here I am in Composer. Let me find a different job. I don't like that one. There we go. Nice. F2, do an output all. And now here's this message that came up. I have 49 archive files that are greater than 15 days old. Do you wish to remove them? So this is that warning that's popping up, and it's saying I have that many files that are more than 15 days old. And the 15 days old is another setting that I can go ahead and adjust as well. The other nice thing that's here is that you can also view the archive folder. So you tell the system where you want all of your zip files to be saved, and you can go ahead and view that here as well. So I have a couple archive files here, as you can see, in my C:/jobs/SPL archive. That's the default folder for where these are saved. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look in one of these zip files just to show you again what's going on in here. So based upon my auto archive settings, I'll say no here. You recall that I want to automatically archive, and I can choose the types of files that it's going to save. So when I did this particular archive job, again you notice that it's a zip file up here. I have my PLT file, and it's interesting, the PLT file is not the full original Composer PLT file. It's only the subset of the PLT file that was actually open and output in Plot. So if you just select one component of a job and tell it to output selected, this PLT file is only that output selected portion of it. Next, so if I double click on this, I can go ahead and it actually brings up that PLT file. So this is what it looks like. I'm quite the designer, aren't I? Very impressive. So that's what the PLT file looks like. In that case, I did an output all as opposed to an output selected. Here's the PRM file. The PRM file, again, is the parameter file that GSPplot generates with all the parameters for that particular job. So if you have a weed border backing white, if you reversed it or flipped it or anything like that, all the parameters for plot are in here. So you can go ahead and take a look at a particular parameter, and you can, if you're trying to recreate that exact same output, you can see what the settings are from plot. The other thing that I save as well, you see down here, is the spool file. And what a spool file is, and we'll talk about spool files here in a little while, but a spool file is basically all the information that's sent to your output device, whether it's an edge or a plotter. It's all saved right here in this spool file as it is sent out to that particular output device. So you see this is an edge job. So here's my intense red as it was sent to the edge. Here is my intense blue as it was sent to the edge. And I also have a weed border that was sent down as well. And that's all captured in that spool file. So if I want to create that exact same output, even though it's 15 days later or 45 days later or whatever it might be, I can do that because I have my spool file saved here in my archive. The other things that I had turned on is that there's a little summary of the job, just sort of rendering time and the number of colors in there and things like that, and which output device it was output to. And then down here are the embedded the image files that you saw in the PLT file. So this is the original. It was a full CMYK job, or a full 24-bit RGB BMP file that I snagged off the internet. And when I actually put it into Composer, I assigned it as a spot color, so it only printed with a single color, so I didn't have to put in CMYK. So, all right, so that's auto archive. And again, the point of auto archiving is to allow you to, number one, see which jobs have been output. Number two, at its most powerful, you can actually save all the critical information to actually allow you to output that exact same job in its exact same form at a later time. So you can use it at its least or at its most, and sort of adjust what you want to do with those archives. All right, sort of interesting. And did you guys all know about automatic archiving, or is this something new for you? Is this truly an advanced topic or no? Bill, did you know about about auto archiving?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, if nothing else, if you want to turn off that annoying message, you can either turn off automatic archive up here at the top, or you can turn off this warning and just have it automatically do it. So remove archive files older than 15 days. If you turn off warn first, you won't get that message when you go into GSPplot at the beginning. So, all right. Good. I'm going to leave it on for myself. Okay, next up we have plot weed sections, or plot weed lines. And what the purpose of plot weed lines are, they're designed to make it easier to remove your background vinyl when you're weeding. So if you have some intricate portions of a job, or if you have something that's very large, by using the weed lines, it can make it easier to break the job down into smaller pieces, more manageable pieces, where you can remove the background vinyl more easily. Okay, so just a couple of requirements. For weed lines or weed sectioning to work, you have to have a job that is either cut only or a job that is print as well as cut. Because again, it presumes that you are weeding a job, so that means that there has to be something to weed, so that means that you either have to cut it or print it, then cut it. So for weed sections, I'm just going to select this part here, and then I'm going to go File, Output Selected, or Shift F12. I'm just going to bring up GSPplot for me. And for weed sections, you can add them in two ways. The first way that you can add a weed section is to go into the ruler, hold down the Control key, and click and drag out of the ruler, and you notice that a line comes out, and you can place this line wherever you want. And when you release the mouse and release the Control key, you notice that I get a line that goes through the background, but it does not go through the cut components of your job. So that's exactly what the weed sections do. It sort of separates out the background, but it doesn't cut through your cut-only components. So I'll add another one. I'm going to hold down the Control key, click and drag down, and there you have a second weed section, and then I'll do a third one too. Holding down the control key, dragging it out of the ruler. You can also do weed sections or weed lines you can create them in the vertical axis as well. So again, hold down the control key and click and drag, and you notice that I have a new weed section right there in between the two words. And if you want to adjust them, all you need to do is click and drag on the weed section, and that allows you to adjust them as well. And you can zoom in and plot if you want to. And so there you have it. All right, so that's the first way that you can go ahead and create some weed sections. And if you want to get rid of a weed line or a weed section, you just click and drag it out. So it's kind of like your panel lines as well. So Control and click out of the ruler to add them, and just click and drag off the surface to
this is Bill. That works fantastic, especially on small copy. It just works great.
So there's a second way that you can add weed lines or weed sections, and that's again by going into GSP Plot, go to the Layout menu, and down here you have Weed Sectioning at the bottom of the Layout menu. And that brings up a dialog box, and you can add some weed lines or weed sections parametrically. The first thing that I usually do if I already have some weed lines that are turned on, click on the Keep Existing Lines checkbox. And that will allow you to do some adjusting of the lines that are already there. If you turn that off, you can actually add some additional ones. So I can go ahead and add some horizontal lines. And what you can do is how many sections or how many lines would you like to add. So it's saying that I'm going to have 2 sections, so it's going to go ahead and add one line. So I have 1, 2. I can go ahead and increase this number, and it's just sort of evenly dividing the number of sections that are there. You can also add them vertically if you wish. So again, the same thing. Because it's such a long job, you can see that it's adding more and more as I increase the number. You can also add a grid. So if you want to do it horizontally and vertically, you can drive yourself crazy if you want to, but that's probably a little excessive there to have 45 different sections. So let me do a horizontal. And you can also do some angled sections if you want to as well. So if you do angled, you can do that, and you can set the angle. And also increase or decrease the number that you have as well. So there you go. I'll sort of do this again. And go into the dialog box again. So again, for the weed sectioning, you go to the Layout menu, and then down at the bottom you have Weed Sectioning. And again, if you already have lines, keep existing lines, turn that on. Or if you want to just modify new ones, go ahead and add a horizontal one, change the number of sections that you need, etc. We have some other features in here that are kind of neat. So if you're concerned about your plotter getting too close to the lines that you actually want to keep, we have a section offset. So right now I have it set to 1/100th of an inch. So if I go ahead and, all right, I have 2 sections. So if I go and look at section offset, if I go OK and then I zoom in, we should see a little bit of a gap between the background. There we go. You can see a little bit of a gap there between the weed line and the actual letters that are being cut. You can make that larger, you can make it smaller, or you can completely turn it off if you want to. If you're doing reverse weeding, you can go into the dialog box and you can tell it, I'm going to keep existing lines, and say that you want to do invert weed segments. You can also have it automatically preview every time you make a change, or you can click on a manual preview if you want to, if you have this guy turned off. The other thing that's kind of neat is that if you don't want to deal with little teeny tiny weed lines, you can tell it to get rid of sections that are larger or smaller than a certain size. So if I only want to have very large weed sections, I can say discard inside or outside segments that are less than a certain threshold. So for the inside, like on the inside of the E's or the inside of the O's, I can make that very large. And you notice that inside of the E there, it disappeared as I made it larger and larger. And you can do the same thing for outside segments. So get rid of any outside segments. So you can sort of set a threshold and only have the very longest ones if you want to. So a lot of capability in this one little quick dialog box built into GSP Plot weed sections. Okay, and Bill, thank you for the testimonial about weed sectioning for you working with small text. All right, so next up, it's sort of an offshoot of using GSP Plot weed sections, and it's kind of a related topic. Sometimes what I'll do if I'm doing a a larger job and I want better control, or just for some reason I want to try to keep my sections to conforming to the text or to the graphics that I have in Composer, I'll actually use Outline to create some custom weed sections or some custom weed lines to make it easier. So because I'm in Composer, of course I have the capability to design whatever I want basically, and I'm using primarily the Outline capability to make custom weed sections. So to do that, what you do is you select whatever it is that you want to output, and then you go into Tools, and then you use Outline. And then I'm going to bring Outline down here, and I'm going to use my apply feature. So this text here is about 5 inches tall. So I'm going to create, first of all, kind of a large halo outline, just to sort of give me a large outline that generally conforms to my text. But it's going to be kind of loosey-goosey. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want this to be like a 1.5 inch outline. And I'm going to click on my Apply button so I can do my adjusting as I go along. So one of the things I might or might not want those two sections to join each other, such as what you see here. So I can go ahead and make it 1.25 inches and then apply it. And now I have my two sections there. So using Outline, I got my first one. And so that's probably a little bit too large for what I'm looking for, because of course I don't want to waste my material, and I want to try to get fairly close to my original text. So I'm going to select the outline that I just created, and I'm going to go into Tools and Outline again, and I'm going to create a second outline. But this time I'm going to tell it that I want to hide originals, and I'm going to get fairly close by doing a negative inset. So the last time it was 1.25, so I'm going to do a minus 1.1. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my Apply button again. And there you see that I'm getting nice and close, but I might want to give it a little bit more of a margin. So wait, dude. Minus 1.0. There we go. All right, so now I have, it kind of looks like spider webs kind of a thing, but you can see that I have the ability to sort of create something that's on the outside of my characters, sort of close, but it still allows me the opportunity to segment off my job, so I'm don't have to deal with such a big piece. So again, with Outline, you have lots of different capabilities. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll use outside contours only, or sometimes I'll turn it on or turn it off. So for the other example that you see up here, I had outside contours only turned off, so it gave me my inside pieces, so then it actually filled in some of those extra gaps between some of the letters as well. So next up we have Composer Soft Shadows. So Composer Soft Shadows is basically using a feature in Composer which is called Convert to Image, and then using a blur feature that's built into Convert to Image. Still recording, good. And again, if I show it in my wireframe mode, you see that I have my original text, and then what I'm going to do is generate a shadow, and then I'm going to convert that shadow into an image with a blur, and then I can also generate an outline around the outside to allow me to generate a cut path around my original text and my soft shadow. All right, so there's my original text, and I'll go ahead and give it some a base color for my text, and I'm going to turn my cuts off for this original text. So I can go to my Arrange toolbar, or I can go to the Arrange menu, or I can just press 8 on the keyboard, and that turns my cuts off. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and generate a shadow. So I go to Tools, and then Shadow, and I'm just going to create just a vector-based shadow. And again, if I want to, I can use my Apply button to get it just so. When I'm generating my shadow, I usually do it as a partial as opposed to a composite, and I can show you the difference here in a moment. And I'll do a drop shadow just so it's going to make it appear that the text is kind of floating off of a surface. And then I'll go ahead and click on Apply so I can see how my shadow looks. And I'll probably give it a little bit more in terms of the depth. I'll make it maybe a 0.5 inch, just so it's going to make it look maybe like it's floating a little bit more off the surface. All right, so I have my shadow and I have my original text. Next up, I'm going to assign the proper color for generating that soft shadow. I'm going to go ahead, and right now it's saying that it's aqua. I actually want to make it black. And because I want it to be sort of a soft-looking shadow, right now it's 100% black. So if I go into my fill bucket, instead of using 100%, if I use a percentage tint, maybe it's 50%, maybe it's 60%, basically the lower percentage tint I use, the softer shadow effect I can get without generating too large of an image file. So now you see that I just have my vector text, my vector shadow. So I'm going to select my shadow now, and now we're going to do the convert to image magic with the Gaussian blur. So you select your shadow, go into the image menu. We only have a couple things available here. I'm going to do convert to image. And what convert to image does, it will take whatever is selected in Composer, and it's going to create one image file for whatever is selected. So the first thing that I need to do is turn on my Gaussian blur, and we'll mess around with the blur to show what happens there. The other thing too is that you can set your resolution, and typically, because I'm just creating sort of an amorphous soft shadow, you certainly don't need high resolution, and in some cases the lower the resolution the better. So you can either set your resolution here with this drop down, or you can come down here and you can set it manually. So if you want to reduce it even further beyond what the drop down allows, I can say I want it to be 1500 pixels wide and 368 for the height. Now I can go ahead and click on Apply, and I can also press F8. Since Omega 6.5, I can go ahead and press F8, and I can see what that shadow looks like. I can toggle between wireframe and filled, even though the dialog box is still up in Omega 6.5. So now you're seeing that, yeah, that's a soft shadow. That's pretty nice, but I want to soften it up even further. So I can do one of two things. I can either increase my Gaussian blur and go ahead and apply it, or I can come over here and I can reduce my resolution. So they kind of work in opposite directions. So as you lower your resolution, the Gaussian blur effect becomes more pronounced. So, and conversely, as you raise your resolution, the Gaussian blur becomes less pronounced. So if I want it to be more blurry, I can't drop it down resolution-wise, but I can come down here to the image dimensions and I can make it, I'll say 800, and that's dropping it down to 206 for the height. And then you'll see that I get sort of a nice, sort of just a hint of a soft shadow. So again, it sort of is making it look like it's floating off the surface kind of a thing. I'll also change my background color just to sort of give it a little more of the effect as well. And the nice thing about this is that this is all reactionable, if that's a word. So if I want to change any of the settings for my soft shadow, I can go to my drop shadow and I can increase this value, my depth value, so I can make it 1 inch instead of 0.5 inches and go ahead and apply that and see how I like that. And it all ripples through automatically, kind of showing you what's going on there. Once you do have your soft shadow generated, one of the nice things about the Edge, of course, is that you can print with spot colors. So right now, this is a CMYK soft shadow that I have here. So what I can do is select the image, and I'm pressing F9 to toggle between viewing the image and viewing the wireframe of the image. So I can select the image and go into my fill bucket here for the image. And I can tell it, instead of process, that I want it to be spot, and I want it to be spot black. So now, instead of doing CMYK and my spot color for that soft shadow, I'm just using my aqua and my spot black. So it's just a simple two-color job to generate that effect. All right? Okay, good. So we have a couple other things that we can do here with the soft shadows as well through the use of the Convert to Image dialog box. So I'm going to double-click again and go into my Convert to Image dialog box here. And one of the other things that I often use is that I turn Hide Originals off, meaning that I want my original shadow that I selected to be exposed because I need to use those vectors in a subsequent operation. So now that I have my originals are exposed, and you notice that it's in front of my soft shadow. So number one, I don't want that in front of my soft shadow, so I'm just going to select it and send it to back. So I can go to Arrange and Send to back, or right-click and send it to back, whatever. So now the vectors are there, but they're hidden behind my soft shadow. There they are. All right. So now that I have my vectors exposed for my soft shadow, I can select my original text, select my shadow vectors, and I'll press F9 again to show my soft shadow. And what I can do is use my interactive outline. Now, I've been going into the outline dialog box and typing in values here, but we also have in Composer what we call interactive outline. You can get to that by holding down the Alt key, the Shift key, and number 1 on the keyboard. And that brings up an interface where you have basically this toolbar here, or property bar, and you also have this this crosshair. And what I'm doing is clicking and dragging with that crosshair, and I'm just clicking and dragging enough so I encompass my soft shadow down there on the bottom. So when I release it, it's going to let that go and automatically generate an outline. Let me see. There we go. And also, since I'm still in this property bar, I can tell it that I want my corners to be round instead of squared off. So it gives me a little more subtle look. The other thing that we also have, for some of these smaller inside shapes, we have outside contours only now available in Omega 6 as well. So now I have that outside path generated. I can select it, and I can go into my fill bucket and turn off my fills and my strokes. Or a keyboard shortcut to turn off fills is Control and the number 1. And a keyboard shortcut to turn off strokes is Control and number 2. And that, of course, is going to leave me with just a black outline, which means that it's cut only. So now when I go into GSP Plot, I have my original aqua text, I have my spot black soft shadow, and I have my contour cut going around the outside. So there it is, a little bit about convert to image and a little bit about soft shadows with Gaussian blur. All right, so just to mess around with some of the settings again, I'll go to convert to image, and I'll do something extreme in terms of the shadow. Maybe I'll make it 300. You notice that as I go higher and higher with my Gaussian blur, it takes longer and longer to generate. So that obviously was not an effective look, but you never know. And also, if I go into, I just also wanted to show you the difference between composites versus partials in terms of the shadow construction. So when you do a partial shadow, what it is, it means it's basically butt registering your shadow against your original selection. So if I move that, you can see that it's just kind of a, the pieces are fitting together like a puzzle. If I do a composite for my shadow, go up to here to drop shadow, do a composite, what it's going to do is my shadow is going to be a composite of the original text plus the shadow as just one object. So if I go ahead and generate that, when I show my soft shadow, you notice that I have a halo all the way around my entire job because it has that 60% black spot black fill that's going all the way around the characters and all the way around the shadow, as opposed to just that butt registered version that I showed before. So that's why typically when I'm doing a soft shadow, I will use the partials instead of the composite.
Hey, Dana, Wild Bill, I use that quite a bit, and it works wonderful, but I have a job to do right now, and I'm not sure how to do it. Maybe you can show us. Okay.
You want to describe it to me?
Yeah. I go back to where you had at the beginning of this, you had 2 lines of copy. One of them had a highlight.
Okay, sure. Okay. Yep, that's good.
I want to know how to. I know how to create a highlight, but how do you create a soft highlight?
Okay, well, actually, if you want to create a soft highlight, all right. That one is a little more.
Same way, but I'm not sure.
That one's a little more interesting. So to create a highlight, what he's saying is one of the examples that I showed before was. Get rid of this guy.
Yeah, the bottom one.
Yeah, down at the bottom. I created those highlights, and I'll step through all the steps to create sort of that highlight there. But you're saying you want this to be green, and you want it to have sort of a softer effect for the highlights? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just the highlight, soft version just on the highlight.
All right. So what you can do, and I'm sort of winging it here. I think we might even have some templates like this actually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to go File, Open, and I'm going to go to C:\jobs, \samples, \templates. So when we introduced this convert to image capability back in Omega 3.0, we included a whole series of templates that were available to sort of make it easier to create some of the special effects. So as you go through, there's something in here, something about soft with let's see, I know what it looks like.
Highlight template highlight Gaussian up. Couple more.
There we go.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So as I press F8, You see that my outside borders are sort of softer, but it doesn't have the inside. So there's another one in here I'm just looking for. Sorry about that. Star soft, or rounded actually. I don't know if this is actually going to do it for you, but rounded and red. So what this one is, this is actually not quite what you're looking for. This is actually the opposite of what you're looking for. So this one has sort of a soft effect, and it has the highlights as the vectors. So it definitely has a soft effect, and because it's all reactionable. So if you don't like the font or whatever, you can go ahead and just double click on it. And you don't have to rebuild it necessarily. You can choose a new font. Make sure that the font will contain all of the effects. All the highlights and things like that. So there you have the sort of the glowing template. And then the other thing is that you can select that image, and right now it's showing as a process color image, but you can go and make it a spot color image and make it whatever color you want. So if you want it to be green, you can go ahead and assign it as spot green, and then again this job only has just black and spot green in there. I don't even know why it has the black actually. Let's see what's in there. It's probably because there's some shadow component underneath, so you might even do without doing the black at all. Select by spot color, fills. Oh, okay, you do need the black. I see. The black is used to generate some of the effects. So if you just select the image and output it, it's just going to be just green for that particular image with the highlights. So I don't know if that helped you at all, Bill, but
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
okay, so go to Jobs, Samples, Templates, and see if you can find and use one of those templates that are in there to sort of do what you need to do. Okay?
Wonderful.
Okay, good. So there's a soft shadow. There you go. So in terms of creating this effect that you see down at the bottom, I'll just take a moment and sort of add those highlights to the one that you see up above. So I'm just going to select this guy up above. I'll just zoom in so I can just work on the letter S. There we go. So the first thing I'm going to do to create those highlights is that I'm actually going to select this, and I'm going to use my interactive outline, and I'm going to actually, believe it or not, I'm going to generate an inline on this.
Okay, so what do you do when you pull up the machine?
So now I have an inline as well as my original text. And this is, you'll see, I'm going to do, 3 or 4 several steps. So this is why we created some of those templates that I was just referring to. Now I'm going to select that inline that I just generated, and I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to use Shadow. Shadow. And then I'm usually, for this highlight effect, I'll use a drop shadow. I'm sorry, a shade shadow where my corners are connected. And I'm going to do a partial again, and I'll go ahead and do an apply. And you can see that that's obviously a little bit too aggressive, so I'll do more like a 0.01 kind of a thing, and then apply that. So now you see that I have just this little sliver of a shadow added to my original text. So since I've applied it, I'm happy with it. I get out of that dialog box, and now what I do is just select the shadow, and the shadow is automatically grouped as its own entity, so I don't have to go through and pick all the individual pieces. So I have my shadow selected, and then I just want to go ahead and assign it to be a clear fill. So it's just going to peek all the way through, and I just need to bring it to front. So we'll go to Arrange and to Front. Arrange and to Front. And there you can see that you have your highlights added in there. So again, just to review real quick, I did an inline on the original text, so that's this shape that you see here. I selected that inline that I generated, and then I did a shade shadow, and then I assigned that shade shadow a clear fill, and I brought it to front, and that's how I generated that effect. Okay? Great. There it is at Fate. All right, good. And again, it's all reactionable, so if you want to adjust the offset or if you want to adjust the thickness of that little sliver, you can do all that through the reaction tree. All right. Next up, we have spool files. View, create, adjust, and print. And so spool files are something that we've had in Omega for quite a while, but they're kind of foreign to some people. But they really are a very useful way to allow you to have consistent output, or they have some other special features built into them, so you can do some things with your Gerber Edge and things like that. So let me open my example here. We have foiladjust.plt. So here's my very attractive job that I have here, and you can see that I have a couple spot colors as well as a cut line on the outside. And I'm just going to do output all and bring it up in GSP plot. And once you're here in GSP plot, the first thing that you can do, it's a kind of a useful thing, is you can do something that's known as pre-flighting, or basically previewing this job as it's going to be sent out to your output devices. And that is basically done through the use of a spool file, but there's a simple menu command right here in GSP plot under the File menu, Print Preview. If you click on Print Preview, it brings up, first of all, internally it generates a spool file, but you don't see it happening. And then it brings up a program called Spool View. And again, what Spool View does, it allows you to view the contents of a spool file, and a spool file contains the data that's sent to your Gerber Edge or sent to your vinyl cutters. So here's my Spool View program, and you can see up here it shows you the colors that are in the job. So I have the red, the black, and the green, and even if you drop it all the way down, it even shows you your cut information. Another thing that you can do with Spool View, instead of viewing each color one at a time, you can also view all colors. So it allows you to go ahead and see your colors as they're overlaid on top of each other. So that's just a quick way to allow you to do some pre-flighting or to actually preview the data that gets sent out to your various output devices. And I use this all the time, especially if I'm doing a reverse job with backing white or something. You know, if I forgot to add my backing white, or if I forgot to reverse something or whatever. This is sort of a nice sanity check before you go ahead and commit to the materials and spend your time and your money and realize when it's too late that you have made a mistake in the job. So Spool View is a nice way to save you time, save your money. Who doesn't want to save time and money, huh? All right, so that's one thing where you can preview or pre-flight your job. The next thing that's kind of neat or kind of important is that I'm going to go ahead and choose an output device, just a local output device, even though, there we go. Don't use. So if you have GQ Manager running and you have a job in GQ Manager, in some cases you might not be sure what a particular job is. So here's the output device that I'm looking at. It's COM3 and Envision 375. So just looking at it here, I have really no idea what that particular job is. So what you can also do, and again this is basically internally it's using a spool file, is that if you have a job in GQ Manager, you can right-click on that job and then go click on View. And then what it does, it brings up that Spool View program again, and it allows you to actually see the data that is being fed to that particular output device. So I just clicked on a plotter, so it's only showing me the plot component of that particular job. If I were to go ahead and press F10 and have it output to a Gerber Edge, and then I go look in GQ Manager, so I should look down here. Here it is, Marvin 2 connecting. I don't actually have that device connected, but that's okay. So I can click on this job, right-click, and then click on View. And again, it brings up Spool View, and it shows me all the colors that are being sent to that particular Gerber Edge. And if I want to see all the colors all together instead of one color at a time, I can go ahead and click on All Colors, and it shows everything, all the colors that are being sent down to the edge laid on top of each other. So that's another useful thing again as well in terms of what on earth is that job? I forgot that I sent it, or what's the order of the jobs that are being output. You can you can instantaneously identify the jobs by going ahead and viewing them. Another thing that occurs with the Gerber Edge, never happens for me of course, but I've heard of cases where people have a Gerber Edge and they need to do some adjusting of their spot colors. Of course in Composer we have chokes and spreads and strokes for chokes and overlaps and overprints and things like that. But there's also a capability built into spool files that allows you to adjust the position of one color plane with respect to another color plane. So I'll go ahead and describe that to you as well. And that's done, again, you can do that through GQ Manager if you want to, or you can do it through this Spool View program. So I'll show you how to get into Spool View first of all. So Spool View, again, is this program that allows you to view the data of a spool file or view the data that gets sent down to an edge or to a plotter. You can run Spool View as a separate job if you want to. And you can do that by, there you go. So you can do that by going to your menu and typing in SPLVIEW Spool View. Here's Spool View 6.5. Oh, wrong version. I moved a little too quickly. SPLVIEW. There there we go, spool view 6.5. All right, and there it is. So if you, what you can do, since I had that job, let's see, in spool view, I'll go here. Here's my foil adjust job. I can view it. It brings up spool view. Up here in the File menu of spool view, we have a button called Adjust. And then what you can do is, because I have this job in GQ Manager, it's automatically opening up this particular job. And then what it does, it brings up this interface, which is basically for your, it's called Foil Adjust. So we have intense red, we have black, and we have green. So if I notice that when I'm printing this job out, the green is shifted a little bit too far to the right with respect to the red, I can come in here and I can tell it that I want to adjust. I'm going to do an exaggerated value. Say I'm going to tell it that I want the green to move 5 pixels to the left. So I'm going to type in -5. And then it's basically going to move only that particular color with respect to it's only going to move that color with respect to the other colors. So you notice that I now, when I print, if I print it to the edge, I'm sorry, I did the red -5. So it moved the red plane 5 pixels to the left with respect to both the black and the green. So you can either move just the green, you can move just the red, or you can move the green and the red, or you can move the black. You can move any of these colors you want by doing this foil adjust capability, which moves one particular or several color planes with respect to the others in the spool file. And then you can go ahead and click on Print, and it's going to print that job out, and it's going to have those color plane adjustments built into that particular job. All right? Okay. So that one's a little, might be a little hard to follow, but because you'll have the webinar recording, maybe you can go back and look. And there's also additional information that I'll include from the What's New document. I believe that was What's New in Omega 4.0. So, all right. So that's a little bit about spool files. So we talked about viewing them. We talked about saving them. The other thing too, if you want to create a spool file and you want to output at a later date, that's very easy to do from GSP-Plot as well. So here I am in GSP-Plot, and here's a spool file that I want to output. Let's say, for some reason, I'm going to do the same job for the customer. They don't want it done any differently anytime, so I can set up repeats, whatever I need to do. And then you can generate a spool file. You go to File, and then Save to Spool File. File, Save to Spool File. There you go. And you can tell it you want print information and cut information in there. You can send it to the edge if you want to, or you can also view it if you want to, but this time I'll just generate it. So I'm going to call this, in my Advanced Topics webinar, I'll call it Test 1. So test1.spool. And now it has all this output information saved in the spool file. And if I want to reuse that spool file, I can do it in a couple ways. I can go to the File menu here in Plot, and I can print an existing spool file, print existing spool file. And I have Test 1. So I open that up, and it asks me where I want to output actually. And then it puts it right into GQ Manager. So I'll see Test 1 in GQ Manager ready to go. Another way that you can also open a spool file is from GQ Manager itself. You can go to the File menu, you can tell it to open and print, and if there's an edge job, you can print that edge job, or you can tell it to open and cut. And if there's cut data in that job, it'll send it to you whatever cutter was set up in the spool file. So there's File, Open and Print, File, Open and Cut. Okay. So that's a spool file. Again, it locks in your output information so it will never change. The only thing you can change is using that foil adjust, as I showed you before, where you can adjust a color plane left or right with respect to the other colors in a job. All right, good. Spool files. So I am showing, again, I've gone over my allotted time, so I have a couple more topics that I can cover if anybody needs to go. Thank you so much for attending today. And as I said before, I'll send out this PowerPoint presentation as well as the recording of this webinar. And so you can if you have to go, thank you very much. And I will send out the recording. You can view it at your leisure in the future. Otherwise, I'll cover a couple more quick topics, probably spend another 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll part our ways for the day.
Fantastic,
okay,
from Wild Bill. Just fantastic.
Oh, great, Bill. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're hired. I love you, man. All right, just a couple more topics. As I said, I have distort gradient fills. So as you see in this example here in the PowerPoint, this top word distort is just a straight gradient. The second one is a gradient just with a regular old distortion. You notice that the gradient does not apply evenly, like from the top of the D. You notice that it's not the same as the top of the T, because it's just a straight gradient fill that gets applied across all the shapes, and it doesn't know that the shapes have been distorted. But you notice that the third one, that the top of the T looks the same as the top of the D, even though it's been distorted. So I'm going to show how to go ahead and to do that right in Composer. And it's really just a simple checkbox in the distortion dialog box. So let me go to Window, and I have my job here. Oh, I have to go to File. C:\\Dana \software \advanced topics. Oh. Advanced Topics Webinar. There we go. And I'm looking for star.plt. Okay. Distort gradients. There we go. All right. So here I have just some text. And doesn't matter what it says. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this a linear fill. So I'm going to say I want this to be 90 degrees. And I'm going to make that to be green instead. Slightly more interesting to look at. All right, apply that. Go ahead. Good. And then when I look at it, I have on screen. All right, so if I go ahead and I select this, delete this text. If I select on screen and I press F8, if I go into my distortion tools and then distortion, there it is. I can choose one of my distortion types, and it doesn't really matter which one it is for the purposes of illustration. But so I'll do a notched bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to make this a little bit more extreme. So go ahead and bring that guy down. And now when I look at it, again, the top of SCRENN over there is different from the top of on. And let's see, make that 90 degrees. All right. So the top of the N over here is a little different from the top of the O because of the way that just the gradient is being applied. It's a straight up and down gradient, so it's not really taking into account the distortion. So if I want to make it so that gradient is applied through my distortion, you go to the distortion dialog box, and here's a simple checkbox right here, Distort Gradient Fills. If I turn that on, it's going to be kind of neat to see what it does and the way it actually deals with it. So now, and I'll show a more extreme example again to sort of illustrate it better, but it actually breaks up the gradient fill into a series of shapes. And because there are a series of shapes, those shapes can then be fed through the distortion program, and they can be warped with the rest of your text. So the actual gradient is contained within these little individual segments that you see. They get distorted, and it gives you a nice effect where your gradient actually gets distorted. So let me go ahead and I'll choose a different distortion type just to show it a little bit better as well. So I think it was number 39 is what I was messing with before. There we go. So there you see that I have the top of the O, and I'll make it all uppercase as well. So just going back through here's another advanced capability. We have change case back here in the text dialog box. So the top of the O over on the left side is the same as the top of the C, which is the same as the top of the N, because again, my gradient has been turned into a series of individual fills, and those individual fills in these segments automatically gets distorted by the distortion program. So there it is before, Control C, and I'll paste it down here. And then there it is just to show before and after. So go to distortion. I'm going to turn this off just to show the two comparisons. So there it is without distorted gradients on the bottom, and then there it is with distorted gradients on the top. So again, another nice design capability. If you're looking for that particular distorted gradient effect, if you're doing a wave or something like that, it can be a really nice effect. And sometimes as you're zoomed out, you might see a little bit of some of the, like the cut line peeking through the outside. But when you go ahead and output it, you won't see those. So as you zoom in, you can see the better resolution. So. And so I'll show a wave. It's, again, kind of a neat effect. We introduced this, I think, in Omega, I don't know, Omega, somewhere between Omega 3 and 5. So. There we go. Got a nice wave there. All right. Cool. And again, this is all using just a single spot color, so it's not CMYK. So as you print it out to your edge, it's just using that one spot color instead of CMYK. You can also export these out as EPS or AI files, or you can export them out as JPEG files, and you can get that same effect in, for your wide format printing workflow or whatever you need. Okay, distorted gradients. Any questions about that? All right, good. Just a sort of a word of usage is that the number of stripes that get generated is based upon the halftone you have selected. So right now, if I just select this one piece here, let me delete the bottom one, F2 to select all, you see that I have 2,957 objects selected. So as you're doing your design work, just as a suggestion, you might want to do this as one of the last steps because it does tend to generate a lot of objects just because of the nature of the function. So do this last in your workflow if you can, or turn on the distorted gradients last. So have your distortion there, but just do the distorted gradients last. So that's number one, because there's so many objects. Do it last in your design process. Number two is that Composer and Omega will automatically adjust the number of halftone fill stripes based upon the size of your objects. So I just changed from 9 inches up to 25 inches, and notice I have just under 3,000 objects at that particular size. If I regenerate this reaction tree, you're going to notice that I increased the number of those stripes because it got bigger, so you need more halftone stripes based upon that larger size. So that's the other thing that I want to mention as well. If you are doing this for a large format inkjet workflow, again, do it last, because as you get larger and larger, it's going to generate more and more objects to give you a nice smooth gradient. So just sort of some logistics points to consider as you're using that feature. Okay? Good. All right, so that's on-screen fills. I'm sorry, that's distorted gradients. And then we have on-screen fills and PLT extract. I'm going to sort of ramble through these guys kind of quickly, but give you the gist of them. And again, if you have questions, feel free to contact me. And I will also include links about both on-screen fills as well as PLT extract. So you can review those, again, at your leisure. All right, so on-screen fills is a capability in Composer. If I go to Window, and it's just basically text. But if you want to assign a fill, I'm going to F2 and clear all my fills and strokes. Typically, if you want to assign a fill, you select something, and then you go into the fill dialog box over here, and then you choose your solid or linear gradient or clear fill or whatever it might be. So if you want to do a gradient, you do that, linear fill, okay. And you can adjust, of course, the angle of your gradient if you want to over here. And so I'll make that guy to be green, click on Apply. So there's fills using the traditional dialog box. But that is sort of a dialog boxy sort of an environment, and it's not that easy to do interactive or iterative fills. So what we did in maybe in Omega 5, is that we added a new way to apply to create fills in Composer. So what I have it selected the way that I always do, select my objects, but click and hold on the fill bucket. And you notice over here on the right-hand side, we have an on-screen fill tool. And what it does, it brings up sort of an on-screen Composer tool that allows you to assign solid colors, linear fills, radial fills, whatever you need to do. So basically it takes all the dialog box capabilities and puts it right on the screen in Composer. So you have, and I'll kind of start from the beginning here. So I'm going to clear all my fills out. So if I just select something and then I go ahead and I go fly this out and click on the fill toolbar, you notice that I just have this line going across, And because this is a solid fill, it doesn't really allow me to do much. But what I can do is click on this box on the end and tell it that I want a solid fill. And then you notice that it gives it the default fill of black. But then you can come up here and you can choose a color from this drop-down, or you can still assign colors also from your traditional palette over on the right-hand side. But if you want to, a lot of times I like to do it from this one because I can type in the beginning letters. So if I want intense blue, I just type in INT and hit the down arrow. There's intense blue. If I hit the down arrow again, it'll give me intense red. Click on OK, and there I have intense red. Another nice thing that I can do is to click on this box again and say I want it to be a linear fill. And this is where it gets kind of neat as well, because I can adjust the angle of my gradient by clicking and dragging on this arrowhead. So as I turn this guy around, move it out of the way. But you can basically, it's much more intuitive and much more interactive to get exactly the effect you need just by clicking and dragging on the composer screen. The other neat thing that you have is that you have these, we call these color stops along the way as well. So I'm clicking and dragging on that bar that you saw, and notice that it's adding an additional color to my gradient fill on the screen. And the other neat thing is right now it's adding black as my gradient. I can do a couple things here. I can tell it, number one, I only want a single spot color gradient, and just by clicking on this big number 1 up here and get rid of that guy. So now I can drag additional colors out. Single color, you got to drive me crazy. So anyway, I have this color stop here, and you can drag additional colors onto the color stop. There we go. And if I want to drag another one, so down here at the end I have another color stop. You can see it on the right-hand side right before the arrow. So I can drag another color from my palette onto that color stop. And you notice that it didn't really create a color there. It's because I need to give it a tint. So up here you have the ability to assign tints as well. So you can click on a color stop and you can adjust the tint, or you can adjust the color. So down here I'm going to go here and make sure my tint is set to be 100%. And now I'm going to see that blue come online. And if I want to, I can adjust the location of these color stops as well. So it's nice, it's interactive, it gives you a lot more design flexibility and freedom than going in and out of the traditional dialog box. It's just doing it right on the screen and allowing you to see the colors right there as you like them. So that's on-screen fills, just sort of a quick summary of what you can do. And again, I'll send additional information as a follow-up to the webinar. If you want to as well, just let me show you as well. It's kind of neat is that you can also do radial fills as well. And when you do the radial fills, it gives you this interface. It gives you half of that arrow, and you can adjust the center point of your radial fill by clicking and dragging. You get that little circle icon. You can click and drag and set your center point. So I have somebody put me on hold. I'm going to mute. Oh, there we go. Thank you. I was going to mute you because we were getting your beautiful on-hold music. 586-468-7680. All right. So that's a little bit about the on-screen fills. And then finally, the last thing that I want to talk about here very quickly is Omega PLT extract. This is something that we just introduced in Omega 6.5. And it's really a very powerful sort of kind of completes the design circle. So you design a job, you output a job, and then you have to go ahead and price that job so you can figure out if you're actually making money or if you want to make more money or whatever it is in terms of what you're trying to track. And this PLT extract makes it really easy to go ahead and find out what you're spending in design time or in materials for vinyls or foils or what have you. So, and then it also makes it so you can also do a presentation using whatever information that you want to include, maybe for customer presentations or even for your own internal tracking purposes. So I'll kind of go through the process very quickly, showing a simple example. So I have a job here in Composer. It's called PLT. There we go. I'll just do let me go find my job. Sorry about this. Alt-D, Alt-N, C, colon, backslash. All right, and it's extract, example, simple presentation. There we go. I thought I already had this job open, but sorry about that. So here's basically my extract. My job is, let's just say for the sake of argument that this is my job. So I go ahead and I output this job to, or number one, if I'm just designing this job, how long did I spend designing this job? I can get that information from the file menu. We have design time shown under there. But what if I want to know how much time I spent designing it, how much I have in vinyl colors, how much I have in foil colors, and how much it's, if I want to charge the customer a certain amount, how much is it going to cost the customer to pay for this job, or how much is it going to cost for me to actually just output this job using list prices for foils and vinyl. So here's my extract example simple. Close that guy. There we go. Extract example simple. So we have a new program. It's called PLT Extract. So Omega PLT Extract 6.5. So if you run that, it brings up a very simple user interface. The first thing you want to do if you want to cost out your vinyls and your foils in the job, you go ahead and select a cost file, and we now put a default cost file in there which shows Gerber vinyls and foils at list pricing, but it's broken down into cost per square foot or cost per linear foot. So there I have my cost file chosen. Next I'm going to select my PLT file, and my PLT file is extract example simple, which is just my very basic job that I was showing there. So now I have my cost file, my PLT file, and I'm going to go ahead and generate my CSV file. I have the job open somewhere. Shame on me. Let me go find it. Okay, don't save. All right, so extract CSV, and it says I already have a job out there. Do you want to overwrite it? Okay. And what it does, it brings up a dialog box where you can choose the format for the particular vinyls and foils you're using. For the sake of speed here, I'm just going to go ahead and click on OK. And we actually have default settings built in there. Those are the ones that are highlighted as blue. So with those default settings, I'm going to say, OK, I have intense blue, ruby red, black, and jet black, and those are 45-meter rolls. And I have Gerber 220 vinyl white, so that's a 15 by 50 roll, and Peacock blue, which is a 15 by 50 roll. So those are our defaults. And it went ahead and it extracted the information about that job, and it applied costing, and it allows me to go ahead and view the CSV file. So it's kind of neat because it shows all sorts of information. It shows you the date it was created, the date that the extraction was done. It shows all the vinyls in your job, all the foils in your job. It shows the part numbers for all of those particular materials. It shows as you go further down, if you did output the job to GSP plot, it'll show you your actual plot output costs as well. It shows you special effects in there such as outline, distortion, warp, shadow. It shows you linear costs as well as square foot costs for all of your materials, et cetera, et cetera. So here's all this information in a CSV file. So what do you do with it from a CSV file? Well, you can do something very basic, such as you can go ahead and, let me undo that. You can go ahead and copy the information out of this CSV file, and you can paste it into Composer if you want to. So I can just go ahead and something as simple as this and just copy and paste. And the column B in many cases is a nice summary of all the information. So if you want to just get a summary, you can just copy column B. So I just highlighted my column B here. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Highlight what the information that you want, go Edit, Copy, or Control-C. Then you can come back here into Plot, and you can go Control-V, Control-V, and it's going to paste that information right here into Plot. So basically, as it looked in your CSV file is how it's going to look here. So it gives you the field names, and it also gives you the information associated with it. So again, for internal business tracking purposes, this can be useful, but you can also use it in another way. So that was just a quick basic way, is that you can copy out of the CSV file and paste into Composer. But another neat thing that you can do is that column A of this CSV file, these are called field codes, and we actually have made it so you can use these field codes and put these into Composer. So here you have design time, design size, font summary, et cetera, vinyl name, and total vinyl foil cost. So you can put these fields into Composer, then you can highlight, select these guys, go into Tools, Repeats Merge, and then we've added a new tab out here, which is called Extract Merge. And I'm going to go ahead and select that CSV file that I created, which is Extract Example Simple. And then I can go ahead and click. And what it does, it automatically populates this PLT file with the information from that extracted example, from that extracted PLT file. So it's telling me that I have 44 minutes and 7 seconds in terms of design time here. It shows the overall size of the job. It shows the TrueType fonts as well as Gerber fonts that are included in this particular job. It shows your vinyl names, your foil names, total vinyl. So this is actually a template that we've included with Omega 6.5 with just a couple of the fields. There's also another template that has all of the fields, and you can pick and choose the fields that you want. And then all you do, you just select those field codes, go to Tools, Repeats, Merge, as I just showed, Tools, Repeats, Merge. Click on this fifth tab, choose your extracted CSV file, and just tell it to go ahead and merge. And you get that information merged right into your PLT file, and you can turn this into sort of a presentation for your customer, or you can use it for your own internal purposes, whatever you want. So this very powerful capability to allow you to track some of the important business metrics, again, such as design time or material output costs, or you can even mark up. So if you always add a 250% markup off of your material costs, you can do a markup in the Extract user interface, and so then you can show actual customer jobs there as well. So if I go to Extract to CSV, if I extract the CSV, I'll say, yes, I want to overwrite it. You see over here that there's a markup field. So you can either do a markup by a percentage, so you can do 250%, or you can do a markup by an absolute value. So if you want to mark up everything by $10, you can do 10, and it's going to mark it up just by $10, basically. So again, it's a sort of a quick summary of the capability. There's a ton of stuff that you can do with this PLT extractor, but I just sort of I'm just kind of making you aware of the capability here in this advanced topics webinar. So thank you so much. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to bid you farewell and hope you have a great Thursday. And again, I will send follow-up information as well as a recording of the webinar. And feel free to contact me anytime if you have any questions, comments. Boy, I wish we really had this feature. Feel free to contact me, and maybe we can try to squeeze it into a future Omega release. So thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. Have a great day, and see you soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.